Welcome to Grace Fellowship Baptist Church Wednesday evening Bible study for June 16th, 2021. Today is Saturday, June 12th, 2021. And tonight we have a long read. There's less explanation though. So let's get started. We're in the book of Joshua. We're going to start in chapter 13, verse 8. And we're going to read all the chapters that deal with the division of the land. And then there'll be some summary and shortness about it. So let's just jump in. The other half of Manasseh, the Reubenites and the Gadites, had received an inheritance that Moses had given them east of the Jordan, as he, the servant of the Lord, had assigned it to them. It extended from Aor on the rim of the Arnon Gorge and from the town in the middle of the gorge, and included the whole plateau of Medeba as far as Dibon, and all the towns of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who ruled in Heshbon, out to the border of the Ammonites. It also included Gilead, the territory of the people of Geshur and Maacah, and all of Mount Hermon and all of Bashan as far as Salcah, that is, the whole kingdom of Og of Bashan, who had reigned in Ashtaroth and Edrei, and had survived as one of the last of the Rephaites. Moses had defeated them and taken over their land. But the Israelites did not drive out the people of Geshur and Maacah, because they continue to live among the Israelites to this day. But the tribe of Levi he gave no inheritance, since the offerings made by fire to the Lord, the God of Israel, are their inheritance, as he promised them. This is what Moses had given to the tribe of Reuben, clan by clan. To the territory from Aor on the rim of the Arnon Gorge, and from the town in the middle of the gorge, and the whole plateau past Medeba, to Heshbon, and all its towns in the plateau, including Dibon, Bamoth Baal, Beth Baal Meon, Jahaz, Kedamoth, Mephaath, Kiriathaim, Sibmah, Zareth Shahar in the hill country, Beth Peor, and the slopes of Pisgah, Beth Jeshimoth, and all the towns on the plateau, and the entire realm of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who ruled in Heshbon. Moses had defeated him and the Midianite chiefs, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, princes allied with Sihon, who lived in that country. In addition to those slain in battle, the Israelites had put to the sword Balaam son of Beor, who practiced divination. The boundary of the Reubenites was on the bank of the Jordan. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the Reubenites, clan by clan. This is what Moses had given to the tribe of Gad, clan by clan, the territory of Jazer, all of the towns of Gilead, and half the Ammonite country as far as Aror, near Rabbath, and from Heshbon to Ramah Mizpah, and Betonim, and from Mahanaim, from the territory of Vibar, and the valley Beth Haram, Beth Nimrah, Sakath, and Zephon, with the rest of the realm of Sihon, king of Heshbon, on the east of the Jordan, the territory up to the end of the Sea of Kinnereth. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the Gadites, clan by clan. This is what Moses had given to the half-tribe of Manasseh, that is, to half the family of the descendants of Manasseh, clan by clan. The territory extended from Mahanaim, and including all of Bashan, and the entire realm of Og, king of Bashan, and all the settlements of Jar and Bashan, 60 towns, half of Gilead, Ashtaroth, Edrei, the royal cities of Og of Bashan. This was for the descendants of Machir, son of Manasseh, for half the sons of Machir, clan by clan. This is the inheritance Moses had given when he was in the plains of Moab, across the Jordan east of Jericho. But to the tribe of Levi Moses had given no inheritance. The Lord, the God of Israel, is their inheritance, as he promised them. So, what's mentioned in chapter 13 is the inheritance that Moses divided to the 2.5 tribes that wanted land over there. And Joshua is marking the boundary here so that it's known to everybody in the whole community. that everybody, at the same time the other 9.5 tribes get their inheritance, the inheritance of these 2.5 tribes is also put in the record. Um, and he stated this has already happened, basically. But he gives it in greater detail. In that meantime, they had divided up the land and assigned it to people, and so they had begun the process of settling the land. And so the 2.5 tribes had done that. Now, chapter 14. Now these are the areas the Israelites received as inheritance in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the heads of the tribal clans of Israel allotted to them. Their inheritances were assigned by lot to the 9.5 tribes as the Lord had commanded through Moses. Moses had granted 2.5 tribes their inheritance east of the Jordan, but had not granted the Levites an inheritance among the rest, for the sons of Joseph had become 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. The Levites received no share of the land, but only towns to live in, with pasture lands for their flocks and herds. So the Israelites divided the land, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Now the men of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite said to him, "You know that the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, at Kadesh Barnea, about you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land, and I brought him back a report according to my convictions. But my brothers who went up with me made the hearts of the people melt with fear. I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. So on that day Moses swore to me, the land on which your feet have walked will be your inheritance, and that of your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. Now then, just as the Lord promised, he has kept me alive for 45 years since the time he said this to Moses, while Israel moved about in the desert. So here I am today, 85 years old. I am still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out to battle now as I was then. Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Amalekites were there, and their cities were large and fortified, but the Lord helping me, I will drive them out just as he said." Then Joshua blessed Caleb son of Jephunneh and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. So Hebron has belonged to Caleb son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite ever since, because he followed the Lord, the God of Israel, wholeheartedly. Hebron used to be called Kiriath Arba, after Arba, who was the greatest man among the Anakites. Then the land had rest from war. So in chapter 14, we learn that it has taken the Israelites 5 years at this point to conquer the land and get to the point of dividing it up. They have, because now when they come to allot the land, Caleb comes up to him and says, "Hey, Moses promised me the land we walked on, give it to me." And of course, Joshua was quite happy to give his fellow spy and accomplice. And Caleb is pointing out that at 85 years old, he was as vigorous to go to war as he was when he was 40. And that at that time, he was vigorous enough that Moses thought he could go handle spying out the land by himself. Well, not by himself, but with 11 other helpers. And that the 12 men could be sufficient to take on any force that they saw. So he was vigorous then. And now, 45 years later, he is still vigorous. And he's vigorous enough to go do battle. We normally think of war, particularly hand-to-hand war, as a young man's game, not to be engaged in by old. In fact, generally, we consider 40 years old too old. U.S. military, for most military people, 20 years in, and you're done. They don't like to accept people much over 25, because that puts them at 45. If you advance in rank really well and you can stay about 22, I think 24 years is the maximum, something like that. It's, and the reasons for those rules are most people are not fit to be in combat by that age. Um, in fact, a lot of the people that advance enough to stay past 20 years, they end up with jobs much higher in the hierarchy and generally don't go to war. If they do, they're sitting in some office somewhere doing the paperwork it takes to keep the younger people engaged in war. And they're engaging in things that need to be done to keep the war machine running. Uh, you know, here Caleb is saying, I'm 85 years old and I'm still able to go do hand-to-hand combat. And I'm going to go drive out these giants that 45 years ago all my peers said couldn't be done. And I'm going to drive them out and get that land. And we'll find out later, he did that. He and his clan, not a very big clan, and he went in and took his land. He was a man of faith. You know, we talk about Joshua being a man of faith. Caleb was a man of faith. And one that was very capable, physically capable man. And he lived quite a while even after that. Enjoyed the land that he took. It wasn't just he managed to take it and then pass it on to his descendants. He lived on it and enjoyed it. God is good. Chapter 15. The allotment for the tribe of Judah, clan by clan, extending down to the territory of Edom in the desert of Zin in the extreme south. Their southern border started from the bay at the southern end of the Salt Sea, crossed south of Scorpion Pass, continued on to Zin, and went over to the south of Kadesh Barnea. There it ran past Hezron up to Adar, carved around to Karka. Then it passed along to Asmon and joined the Wadi of Egypt, ending at the sea. This is their southern border. The eastern border is the Salt Sea as far as the mouth of the Jordan. The northern border started from the bay at the sea at the mouth of the Jordan, went up to Beth Hoglah, and continued north to Beth Araba, to the stone of Bohan, son of Reuben. The boundary then went up to Debar from the valley of Achor, and turned north to Gilgal, which faces the pass of Adumim, south of the gorge. It continued along to the waters of En Shemesh, and came out at En Rogel. Then it ran up the valley of Ben Hinnon, along the southern slope of the Jebusite city, that is, Jerusalem, and from there it climbed to the top of the hill west of the Hinnom Valley, at the northern end of the valley of Rephaim, and from the hilltop the boundary headed toward the spring of the waters of Nephtoah, and came out at the towns of Mount Ephron, and went down toward Baalah, that is, Kiriath Jearim, and there it carved westward from Baalah to Mount Seir, ran along the northern slope of Mount Jearim, that is, Kesalon, and continued down to Beth Shemesh, and crossed to Timnah. It went to the northern slope of Ekron, turned toward Shikharon, passed along Mount Baalah, and reached Jabneel. The boundary ended at the sea. The western border is the coastline of the Great Sea, and the Great Sea is the Mediterranean. Just so that when we read that, you know where we're talking. And by the way, the Salt Sea is the Dead Sea. Two references there. In accordance with the Lord's command to him, Joshua gave to Caleb son of Jephunneh a portion of Judah, that is, Kiriath Arba, that is, Hebron. Arba was the forefather of Anak. From Hebron, Caleb drove out 3 Anakites, Sheshiah, Ahaman, and Talmal, descendants of Anak. From there he marched against the people living in Debar, formerly called Kiriath Shepher, and Caleb said, I will give my daughter Asah in marriage to the man who attacked and captured Kiriath Shepher. Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's brother, took it, so Caleb gave his daughter Asah to him in marriage. One day when she came to Othniel, She urged him to ask her father for a field. When she got off her donkey, Caleb asked her, "What can I do for you?" She replied, "Do me a special favor. Since you have given me the land in the Negev, give me also springs of water." So Caleb gave her the upper and lower springs. This is the inheritance of the tribe of Judah, clan by clan. The southernmost tribes, the towns of the tribe of Judah in the Negev, started toward the boundary of Edom were Kibzeel, Eder, Jair, Jena, Diamnah, Abna, Kadesh, Hazor, Ithnan, Ziph, Telem, Bealoth, Hazor Hadathah, Kerioth Hezron, that is Hazor, Amam, Shema, Molada, Hazar Gada, Heshmon, Beth Pelet, Hazar Shuel, Beersheba, Bizothaya, Bahala, Aim, Ezim, Eltolad, Kesil, Hormah, Ziklag, Madamana, Sensahan, Lebaoth, Shilhim, Ain, and Rimnon, a total of 29 towns and their villages. The western foothills, Eshtaol, Zara, Ashna, Zanoah, En Ganim, Tapua, En Jarmoth, Adullam, Saka, Azekah, Shuaraim, Adathaim, and Gedera, or Gederathaim, 14 towns and their villages. Zenan, Hadashah, Migdal Gad, Diain, Dilaon, Mizpah, Jachathiel, Lashish, Boskoth, Eglon, Kabon, Lamos, Kitlish, Gedaroth, Beth Dagon, Nahamah, and Makkadah, 16 towns and their villages. Libnah, Ether, Eshan, Ephah, Ashna, Nezib, Kailah, Eskzib, and Marashah, 9 towns and their villages. Ekron and its surrounding settlements and villages west of Ekron, all that were in the vicinity of Ashdod, together with their villages, Ashdod, its surrounding settlements and villages, and Gaza, its settlement and villages, as far as the Wadi of Egypt and the coastline of the Great Sea. The hill country, Shemir, Jatir, Soka, Danah, Kiriath Shana, that is Debar, Anab, Eshtemoth, Anim, Goshen, Holon, and Gilah, 11 towns and their villages. Arba, Duma, Eshan, Janim, Beth Tapua, Athekah, Humtah, Kirith Arba, that is Hebron, and Zior, 9 towns and their villages. Maon, Carmel, Ziph, Jatmah, Jezreel, Jokdeam, Zanoah, Cain, Gibeah, and Timnah, 10 towns and their villages. Halhul, Bethzer, Gador, Ma'aroth, Beth Anath, and Eltikon, 6 towns and their villages. Kirioth Baal, that is Kiriath Jearim, and Rabbah, 2 towns and their villages. In the desert, Beth Araba, Midden, Sakakah, Nibshan, the city of Salt, and En-Gedi, the 6 towns and their villages. Judah could not dislodge the Jebusites who were living in Jerusalem. To this day, the Jebusites live there with the people of Judah. Now, remember a couple of chapters ago, they defeated the king of Jerusalem and took it. But before the Israelites could inhabit Jerusalem, the Jebusites took it. It had been a Jebusite city for centuries, and apparently these other people had dislodged the Jebusites, and the Jebusites saw somebody kill those people and said, "We're taking our city back." They built it, and the Israelites did not take possession of it fast enough, but what the Jebusites took it back, basically inhabited it. And apparently they knew it better and its defenses better, and they ended up with it, even though the Israelites had been the ones that conquered it. Kind of interesting. Anyway. Chapter 16. The allotment for Joseph began at the Jordan of Jericho, east of the waters of Jericho, and went up from there through the desert to the hill country of Bethel. There it went on from Bethel, that is, Luz, crossed over to the territory of the Arkites in Ataroth, and descended westward to the territory of the Japhletites as far as the region of the lower Beth Horon, and known to Gezer, ending at the sea. So Manasseh and Ephraim, the descendants of Joseph, received their inheritance. This is the territory of Ephraim, clan by clan. The boundary of the inheritance went from Ataroth Adar in the east to upper Beth Horon, and continued on to the sea. From Mechmeth-Hoth to the north, it carved eastward to Taanath Shallow, passing on by Genoa on the east. Then it went down from Genoa to Ataroth and Naaroth, touched Jericho, and came out at the Jordan. From Tapua, the border went west to Kenneth Ravine and ended at the sea. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the Ephraimites, clan by clan. It also included all the towns and their villages that were set aside for the Ephraimites within the inheritance of the Manassites. They did not dislodge the Canaanites living in Gezer. To this day, the Canaanites live among the people of Ephraim, but are required to do forced labor. So, this is the first indication we have that there were still people living in the land, and they did not exterminate everybody, and all they did was put them into forced labor. So we're seeing already they're beginning to disobey God, and it's going to be a thorn in their flesh. They did not do what they should have done, and Ephraim suffered for it. Judah didn't occupy the Philistine territories, even though they were allotted those territories, and claimed them. And there was basically continual warfare between Judah and the Philistines up until David finally won. 400 plus years of continuous warfare. But they just didn't occupy the territory. If they didn't win it, they didn't occupy it. They didn't partially conquer it and put the people in slavery. They just didn't own the territory. Ephraim, they basically surrounded them and struck a deal and made them slaves, and did not. And it became a trap to them because they ended up worshiping false gods and practicing false religious practices. And even up into the Babylonian captivity, the prophets condemned all the religious activities that were brought into the land because they did that. It was only in the Babylonian captivity that they finally got rid of all the practices that Ephraim allowed in by allowing these wicked people to continue to live. Chapter 17. This is the allotment for the tribe of Manasseh to Joseph's firstborn, that is, to Machir, Manasseh's firstborn. Machir was the ancestor of the Gileadites, who had received Gilead and Bashan because the Amalekites were great soldiers. So this allotment was for the rest of the people of Manasseh, the clans of Abiezer, Helkah, Asriel, Shechem, Hepher, and Shemadiah. These are the other male descendants of Manasseh, son of Joseph, by their clans. Now Zelophehad, son of Hepher, the son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, had no sons but only daughters, whose names were Mahlah, Nohah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. They went to Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the leaders, and said, "The Lord commanded Moses to give us an inheritance among our brothers." So Joshua gave them an inheritance among the brothers of their father, according to the Lord's command. Manasseh's share consisted of 10 tracts of land besides Gilead and Bashan east of the Jordan, because the daughters of the tribes of Manasseh received an inheritance among the sons. The land of Gilead belonged to the rest of the descendants of Manasseh. The territory of Manasseh extended from Asher to Michmahoth, east of Shechem. The territory ran southward from there to include the people living in Tappuah. Manasseh had the land of Tappuah, but Tappuah itself, on the boundary of Manasseh, belonged to the Ephraimites. Then the boundary continued south to Cana Ravine. There were towns belonging to Ephraim lying along the towns of Manasseh, but the boundary of Manasseh was the northern side of the ravine and ended at the sea. On the south, the land belonged to Ephraim, on the north to Manasseh. The territory of Manasseh reached the sea and bordered Asher on the north and Issachar on the east. Within Issachar and Asher, Manasseh also had Bethshan, Iblaim, Laam, and the town and the people of Dor, Endor, Taanach, and Midgo, together with their surrounding settlements. The third in the list is Naphoth. Yet the Manassites were not able to occupy these towns, for the Canaanites were determined to live in that region. However, when the Israelites grew stronger, they subjected the Canaanites to forced labor, but did not drive them out completely. Again, not doing what God told them to do, and it became a thorn in the flesh. They ended up worshiping other gods. Verse 14, the people of Joseph said to Joshua, "Why have you given us only one lot and one portion for inheritance? We are a numerous people, and the Lord has blessed us abundantly." "If you are so numerous," Joshua answered, "then, and if the hill country of Ephraim is too small for you, go up into the forest and clear land for yourselves there in the land of the Perizzites and Rephaites." The people of Joshua replied, "The hill country is not enough for us, and all the Canaanites who live in the plain have iron chariots, both those in Bethshan and its settlements and those in the valley of Jezreel." But Joshua said to the house of Joseph, to Ephraim and Manasseh, "You are numerous and very powerful. You will have not only one allotment, but the forested hill country as well, cleared, and its furthest limits will be yours. Though the Canaanites have iron chariots, and though they are strong, you can drive them out." So Joshua had greater faith than the Ephraimites and Manassites. And that's part of why those two tribes allowed foreigners to stay in the land and made them slaves instead of doing what God told them. They didn't have enough faith to do it right. And they were scared of the iron chariots in the plains. And admittingly, a chariot on a plain is a fearful weapon and hard to attack and all that. But they had already conquered chariots. God had them succeed. They were just scared. They weren't doing what God said. They weren't being courageous and valiant and have faith. And consequently, they didn't succeed. But Joshua knew that if they did try it, God would have them win. It's better to trust God. Chapter 18. The whole assembly of the Israelites gathered at Shiloh and set up the tent of meeting there. The country was brought under their control, but there were still 7 Israelite tribes who had not yet received their inheritance. So Joshua said to the Israelites, "How long will you wait before you begin to take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your fathers, has given you? Appoint 3 men from each tribe. I will send them out to make a survey of the land and write a description of it according to the inheritance of each. Then they will return to me. You are to divide the land into 7 parts. Judah is to receive its territory in the south, and the house of Joseph and his territory in the north. After you have written descriptions of the 7 parts of the land, bring them here to me, and I will cast lots for you in the presence of the Lord our God. The Levites, however, do not get a portion among you, because the priestly service of the Lord is their inheritance. And Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh have already received their inheritance on the east side of the Jordan. Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave it to them." As the men started on their way to map out the land, Joshua instructed them, "Go and make a survey of the land and write a description of it. Then return to me, and I will cast lots for you here at Shiloh in the presence of the Lord." So the men left and went through the land. They wrote its description on a scroll, town by town, in 7 parts, and returned to Joshua at the camp at Shiloh. Joshua then cast lots for them at Shiloh in the presence of the Lord, and there he distributed the land to the Israelites according to their tribal divisions. The lot came up for the tribe of Benjamin, clan by clan. Their allotment territory lay between the tribes of Judah and Joseph. On the north side, their boundary began at the Jordan, passed the northern slope of Jericho, and headed west into the hill country, coming out at the desert of Beth Aven. From there it crossed the south slope of Luz, that is Bethel, and went down to Aroth Adar on the hill south of lower Beth Horon. From the hill facing Beth Horon to the south, the boundary turned south along the western side and came out at Kiriath Baal, that is Kiriath Jearim, the town of the people of Judah. This was the western side. The southern side began at the outskirts of Kiriath Jearim on the west, and the boundary came out at the spring of the waters of Nephatoah. The boundary went down to the foot of the hill facing the valley of Beth Hinnon, north of the valley of Rephaim. There it continued down the Hinnon valley along the southern slope of the Jebusite city, and so to En-Rogel. Then it curved north and went to En-Shemesh, continued to Gileath, which faces the pass of Adamon, and ran down to the stone of Bohan, son of Reuben. It continued to the northern slope of Beth Araba and on down into the Araba. It then went to the northern slope of Beth Hoglah and came out at the northern bay of the Salt Sea at the mouth of the Jordan in the south. This was the southern boundary. The Jordan formed the boundary on the eastern side. These were the boundaries that marked out the inheritance of the clans of Benjamin on all sides. The tribe of Benjamin, clan by clan, had the following cities: Jericho, Beth Hoglah, Emek Keziz, Beth Araba, Zemamriim, Bethel, Avim Para, Ophrah, Kepher Ammoni, Ophni, Geba, 12 towns and their villages. Gibeon, Ramah, Beroth, Mizpah, Kephirah, Moza, Rakim, Irpiel, Tarlaha, Zelah, Ha'elef, the Jebusite city, that is Jerusalem, Gibeah, and Kariath, 14 towns and their villages. This was the inheritance of Benjamin for its clans. And notice that Jerusalem was given to the Benjamites, but they never took it. It was taken by David of Judah of the tribe of Judah, and it therefore became a tribe for Judah. But he also made it a capital city, so it was something for everybody and not part of the tribe. So Saul, trying to be the first king, never conquered it. They won it during his reign, but the general that took it was David. It would have been the ideal city for a king to rule from, and David did. And David finally annihilated the Jebusites. Anyway, chapter 19. The second lot came out for the tribe of Simeon, clan by clan. Their inheritance lay within the territory of Judah. It included Beersheba, or Sheba, Moadah, that's a hard one for me to say, Hazar Shual, Bela Izim, El Tadalad, Bethel, Hormah, Ziklag, Beth Markaboth, Hazar Susha, Beth Lebaoth, and Saruhan, 13 towns and their villages. Ain, Rimmon, Ether, Ashnan, 4 towns and their villages, and all the villages around these towns as far as Baalath Beer, Ramah in the Negev. This was the inheritance of the tribe of Simonites, clan by clan. The inheritance of the Simonites was taken from the share of Judah because Judah's portion was more than they needed, so the Simonites received their inheritance within the territory of Judah. That speaks to some politics there. We don't understand what the politics were, but there was some sort of politics going on. Verse 10. The third lot came for Zebulun, clan by clan. The boundary of their inheritance went as far as Sarid. Going west, it ran to Maralah, touched Debesheth, and extended to the ravine near Jokneam. It turned east from Sarid toward the sunrise to the territory of Kisla Tabor, and went on to Debaroth and up to Japhia. There it continued eastward to Gath Hefer and Eth Kazim. It came out at Ramon and turned toward Nahah. These were the boundaries. There the boundary went around on the north to Hanathon and ended at the valley of Ifta-el. Included were Kitath, Nahalal, Shimron, Edalah, and Bethlehem. There were 12 towns and their villages. Now, we know Bethlehem is Bethlehem of Judah. It tells you something about the politics that happened during the time of the judges, as Judah expanded its territory as they grew, and maybe took it from other tribes, other Israelites. We tend to think of this as one nation. No, it was 12 tribes defending their own territory, and they would have been at war with each other at various points in time. It's not recorded in Scripture, but inheritance given to one tribe ended up in a different tribe. The other thing that could have happened is political intrigue and intermarriage and exchange of land by inheritance and changing it from one tribe to another, which also was not supposed to happen according to the Mosaic Law. So not everybody treated everybody nice. Just in case you thought our current culture where the elites game the system for their advantage and everybody else's disadvantage was new. No, it's human nature. Verse 17. The fourth lot came out for Issachar clan by clan. Their territory included Jezreel, Keshuloth, Shuman, Hephraim, Shion, Anaharath, Ribbath, Kishion, Ebiz, Rima, and Genim, and Heda, and Beth Pazaz. The boundary touched Tabor, Shashazuma, and Beth Shemesh, and ended at the Jordan. There were 16 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the tribes of Issachar clan by clan. Allotment for Asher. The fifth lot came out for the tribe of Asher clan by clan. Their territory included Helkath, Hali, Betan, Eksheph, Alamelach, Ahmed, and Mishal. On the west, the boundary touched Carmel and Shihor Libnah, and then turned east toward Beth Dagon, touching Zebulun and the valley of Iftah El, and there went north to Beth Emek and Neiel, passing Kabul on the left. It went to Adnam, Rehob, Haman, and Cana, as far as Greater Sidon. The boundary then turned back toward Ramah and went on to the fortified city of Tyre, turned toward Hosha, and came out at the sea in the region of Azib, Umah, Aphek, and Rehob. There were 22 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of Asher, clan by clan. The sixth lot came out for Naphtali, clan by clan. Their boundary went from Heleph and the large tree at Zananim, passing Adamim, Nekeb, and Jabneel, Lachem, and ended at the Jordan. The boundary ran west along Asnoth Tabor and came out at Hekok. It touched Zebulun on the south, Asher on the west, and the Jordan on the east. The fortified cities of Ziddim, Zir, Hamath, Rakath, Kinnereth, Admah, Ramah, Hazor, Kadesh, Adria, and Hazor, Iron, Migdal El, Horam, Beth Anath, and Beth Shemesh. These were 19 towns and their villages. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the tribe of Naphtali, clan by clan. Allotment for Dan. The seventh lot came out for the tribe of Dan, clan by clan. The territory of their inheritance included Zorah, Eshtaol, Ir Shemesh, Shalalibin, Aijalon, Ithlal, Elon, Timnah, Ekron, Eltekah, Gibbethon, Baalath, Jehud, Ben Berek, Gath Rimmon, Mejarkon, Rakon, and the area facing Jaffa. But the Danites had difficulty taking possession of their territory, so they went up and attacked Lashim, took it, and put it to the sword and occupied it. They settled in Lashim and named it Dan after their forefather. These towns and their villages were the inheritance of the tribe of Dan, clan by clan. Now, notice, when Dan couldn't conquer the people, they said, okay, we'll go attack something a little easier and kill everybody there. In the days of the judges, the town of Dan was known as the town of judges. They were people who properly um, executed judgment according to the law of Moses and gave a fair settlement. Uh, and so people from all over Israel would go there to get a correct judgment. Beginnings matter. Uh, the tribe of Dan found it difficult, and instead of making compromises with people, they went up and took what was nominally a harder city that hadn't been given as inheritance and made it their inheritance and did exactly what Moses said. And it blessed them. And it blessed them until um, an idol was set up in their town by the first king of Israel, the 10 northern tribes, and it became a snare to them. And eventually they were conquered because of that. But up until then, they had been a blessing. And again, beginnings matter. So when um, the idol was set up in Dan, it began the downfall. Um, you know, if you're going to have a new beginning, make sure it's a good one. Don't start over with something worse. If you have a chance for a beginning, make it a good one. Follow God correctly. It's better to fail trying to do the right thing and just utterly fail than to compromise and get a half win, because that ultimately is a loss. Verse 49. When they had finished dividing the land into its allotted portions, the Israelites gave Joshua son of Nun an inheritance among them, as the Lord had commanded. They gave him the towns he asked for, Timnath Sherah in the hill country of Ephraim, and he built up the town and settled there. These are the territories that Eleazar, son of the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the heads of the tribal clans of Israel assigned by lot at Shiloh in the presence of the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting, and so they finished dividing the land. Next week, I'm going to get into the towns of refuge, which is chapter 20, and the towns for the Levites, which is chapter 21. Again, it's going to be um, a lot of reading of place names and stuff. I may go on the chapter after that that begins more history. I may not. As you can tell by my reading, these are not English names. They are not American type names. They do not roll off the tongue well if you're used to speaking English. Hebrew put vowels together, and when English puts vowels together, one of them is silent. In Hebrew, every vowel is pronounced. And there are a few that I pronounce by the name that we use today. It wasn't the proper pronunciation in Hebrew. Let's see, what was the one that's most famous? Jezreel is one of those. Jezreel, it would be the way they pronounced it. Beersheba is another one of those. Beersheba is the way they would have pronounced it. That just does not pronounce in English well. Putting a long E next to a short E just is hard for English speakers. Nobody pronounces that way today. Funny thing, it's hard in a lot of languages, and modern Hebrew doesn't pronounce it that way. They call it Beersheba. So, and some of these names were not even Hebrew names. That they may have been Hebraized names from the Canaanite names, but a lot of the Canaanite languages were from the same language roots that Hebrew came from. And the place names were very similar to Hebrew names. So they may have just, you know, pulled the name straight in. Uh, you did notice several places where a city was given one name and then um, said, here's the alternate name. You'll find out later that the alternate name was the one the Israelites called it. They changed the name when they conquered it. And Dan was kind of one of those famous ones. Um, there were some others. They had a big task. The Egyptians had surveying down to a pretty good science, pretty good art. Um, they very often used slaves to do so. So the people that left Egypt probably knew how to survey land. The problem is, all those people, except for Joshua and Caleb, died in the desert. And people wandering around the desert don't have a lot of need for surveying land. So they didn't end up preserving those skills that they left Egypt with. And so when they get to Canaan, we see a serious deterioration in their surveying skills. And they listed it, but other than some um, very specific territories, they did not give good descriptions of where the boundaries were. And basically told people, it's out that way. Go conquer it. And that's part of why Dan, when they couldn't conquer part of their territory, turned to a different territory that wasn't really part of their inheritance and conquered it. It's like, yeah, we need land. And we're not succeeding here, so we'll go succeed there. And as they conquered the land and drove out people, some of these tribal boundaries changed. It was kind of squishy borders, and the history gets complicated. But they had an idea of where they were going and what they were doing and where they could go conquer. And war did not leave the land. They continued to conquer territory for a long time. The tribes that compromised ended up bringing idol worship into Israel. The tribes that did not prospered more. Judah did not allow idol worship. If they couldn't conquer it and kill everybody, they just left it out of their territory. Hence, the Philistines were a pain in their side, but the Philistines were their own separate territory. It's technically part of Judah, but they never managed to conquer it and kill people, so they were still there. They had their own land. Manasseh and Ephraim, on the other hand, compromised and became the downfall of all of Israel, basically. In fact, Ephraim became the leading tribe of the 10 northern tribes, and it became a snare to them that caused them to be the first country to be conquered. It was God's people, and caused them to be essentially wiped out completely. The only survivors were refugees that fled to Judah, the southern kingdom, and lived there as aliens among the other Israelites, which is kind of an odd concept that Israelites living among Israelites is they're living as aliens in the land. But it shows you how important good beginnings are. And it doesn't mean that good beginnings are everything. I mean, Dan eventually fell because they didn't oppose an idol set up in their town. They should have had the wisdom to not do it, but they allowed it or didn't oppose it. And then it became a snare to them. You got to have a good beginning. You got to have a good middle. And you got to have a good ending. But if you don't have a good beginning, it's very hard to have a good middle and good ending. And that's one of the lessons here. They did assign the land, and they did eventually conquer it all, but it took a long time because they didn't do it under the rule of Joshua. Gracious Lord, help us to be people of strong beginnings, strong middles, and strong endings, that we would be faithful to you like Joshua was, that we would be faithful to you like Judah was. We would not be people that compromised like Ephraim and Manasseh did, that we would be unwavering in our devotion to you, be faithful to understand Scripture and follow it truthfully. Lord, help us to be pure of heart, pure of action, loving to each other, and defending our own, and defending your people. Help us to lift you up and defend your faith in you, that we can declare that Jesus is Lord to anyone. Lord, help us to be faithful and sound people. Lord, I also ask that you be with Vacation Bible School, that it be a success, that we have children there that need to know you, that they hear, that seeds are planted, that some would come to know you as Lord and Savior, and the ones that don't this year will, at some point in their life, use that knowledge to know that they need to know you as Lord and Savior, and come follow you as Lord and Savior. That they would trust you, call you Lord, and believe you were raised from the dead. In your gracious name, amen. I hope to see you Wednesday night, and if not, we'll see you back here next week.